After my heart surgery, I dropped a message in our family group chat, "Who's going to pick me up from the hospital?" My son Jason replied, "Just call a cab. I'm watching TV." A minute later, my wife Linda chimed in, "Why don't you just stay there another month? It's been nice without you." That evening, when my face showed up on the local news, their phones blew up with 67 missed calls to me, none of which I answered. Because what I did that day changed everything. Before I keep going, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment. Tell me what time it is where you're watching from. The pain had slammed into me like a lightning bolt, splitting my chest wide open. I gasped for air, my eyes flying open into a blinding white light that made my head throb. Where the hell was I? The room spun in dizzy circles, white walls, beeping monitors, tubes trailing out of my arms like plastic vines. I tried to push myself up, but my body screamed in protest. Something was wrong. Really wrong. My chest felt like someone had pried it open with a crowbar. Even through the thin hospital gown, I could feel thick bandages wrapped tight around me. "Mr. Miller, you're awake." A woman in a white coat appeared by my bedside. She had kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I'm Dr. Carter, your cardiologist. How are you feeling?" "Like I just got hit by a truck." My voice came out as a dry whisper, my throat raw and burning. "What happened to me?" She glanced at the monitor beside me, calm and professional. "You had emergency open-heart surgery 2 days ago. Triple bypass. Your heart stopped for 47 seconds during the procedure." 47 seconds. The words echoed in my head like rocks dropping into a bottomless well. So, I was dead. Technically, yes. But we brought you back. She checked my pulse, steady against her fingers. The surgery was successful. You'll spend 2 weeks here recovering, then slowly return to normal life. 2 weeks. I looked around the sterile room. Through a small window I could see the gray Phoenix skyline under cloudy January skies. No flowers on the nightstand. No cards. No sign that anyone cared I was even here. A nurse bustled in, adjusting the 4 in my arm. She had a warm smile, gentle hands. "Mr. Miller, I'm Jennifer. I'll be taking care of you today. Are you in much pain right now?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She jotted something down and pressed a button on the 4. Within minutes, the sharp edges of pain dulled into something bearable. Dr. Carter pulled up a chair beside me. "Mr. Miller, I need to ask a few questions to check your memory." "What year is it?" 2025. "Good. And what month?" "January." The word felt heavy on my tongue. "Excellent. Now squeeze my hands." I tried, but my grip was weak as a newborn's. Still, she nodded in approval. "Your motor skills look good. Memory's intact. We'll focus on managing pain for the next few days and get you walking short distances soon." When she left, it was just me and the endless beeping of the machines. I reached for the bedside table, my fingers brushing against my phone. Dozens of notifications, news alerts, spam emails, pharmacy reminders. I scrolled past them, looking for what really mattered. Messages from Linda. Calls from Jason. Anything. Nothing. The last family chat message was 3 weeks ago, Linda complaining about the grocery store running out of her favorite yogurt. Before that, Jason asking for money to fix his car. Not a single word about my surgery. Not one call to check on me. My hands shook as I set the phone down and stared up at the ceiling tiles. 47 seconds of being dead, and apparently nobody even noticed I was gone. Not a message. Not a call. I closed my eyes and let the silence of the hospital swallow me. The sterile, antiseptic smell pulled at memories I'd been avoiding for months. It all started back in the summer of 2020. I was out in the backyard of our Phoenix home, planting tomatoes in the blazing heat. Suddenly, the tightness wrapped around my chest like an iron band. I grabbed onto the fence post until it passed, convincing myself it was just the Arizona sun getting the best of me. "Andy, you're being dramatic again," Linda called from the back porch, sipping iced tea. "Come inside before you give yourself a stroke." I laughed it off. 66 years old and still tough as an ox, I told myself. I just needed more water, more rest. But the episodes kept coming. By 2021, climbing the stairs to our bedroom felt like hiking a mountain. I'd stop halfway, clutching the banister while my heart pounded like it was trying to break out of my chest. Linda would already be in bed, glued to her evening shows. "You're just getting old," she'd say without looking away from the TV. "Maybe cut back on all those weekend projects." I never told her about the metallic taste in my mouth during the worst spells, or how the world tilted sideways when I stood up too fast. She was too busy with her book club and charity meetings. Jason was even less help. When I mentioned feeling drained all the time, he just shrugged from his permanent spot on the living room couch. "Maybe see a doctor, Dad." "Actually, wait, that costs money. Try some vitamins first." 28 years old, living rent-free in our basement, and his biggest concern was that my medical bills might eat into his inheritance. The first real attack came one Tuesday morning in March 2023. I was making coffee when the pain hit like a sledgehammer. I dropped to the linoleum floor, coffee grounds scattering everywhere. "Linda." I tried to call out, but my voice barely carried past the doorway. She found me 10 minutes later, still sprawled on the floor, gasping for air. "Oh, Andy, did you fall?" she asked, helping me into a chair. But her focus was already somewhere else. "I've got a hair appointment in an hour. Can you drive yourself to the doctor?" Instead, I drove myself to the ER. The young doctor who examined me had steady hands and concerned eyes. "Mr. Miller, you've had a minor heart attack. We need to run more tests." The young doctor who looked me over had steady hands and serious eyes. "Mr. Miller, you've suffered a mild heart attack. We'll need to run more tests." The results confirmed what I'd feared all along but hadn't wanted to face. Years of chest pain weren't just age or stress. My arteries were closing up like old, rusty pipes. Back in November, Dr. Martinez had laid it out straight: without surgery, you've got maybe 6 months. With a triple bypass, you could have another 10 good years. 10 years. I remember gripping the steering wheel of my old Chevy truck, hands shaking as I drove home that day. The only question that haunted me was, did I really want to spend those years with people who barely noticed when I was dying? The sound of my hospital room door opening yanked me back to the present. Nurse Jennifer peeked in, her warm smile as steady as ever. "How are you feeling, Mr. Miller? Do you need anything for the pain?" I glanced down at my phone again, still no messages from Linda or Jason. Nothing but silence. "Just thinking," I murmured. She gave me a knowing nod. Surgery gives folks a lot of time to think. Sometimes that's a blessing, sometimes not so much. When she left, I stared at the family group chat on my screen. My thumb hovered over it, hesitating. 2 weeks since surgery. 2 weeks of silence. Maybe they didn't know. Maybe the hospital never reached them. Maybe, just maybe, 45 years of marriage and raising a son still counted for something. Maybe. The morning of January 29th came bright and clear through my hospital window. Freedom Day. I packed my few belongings into an old sports bag Linda had bought me years ago for fishing trips. Each item folded carefully: my reading glasses, the paperback I'd barely touched, pajamas that still smelled faintly of home. My chest felt stronger. The stitches still pulled when I moved, but the crushing pain had eased into something I could manage. Dr. Carter signed my discharge papers with a smile. "You're lucky to be alive, Mr. Miller. Make the most of this second chance." That morning, I checked my phone for the 20th time. Still nothing from Linda or Jason. 2 weeks of silence while I clawed my way back from the edge of death. Maybe they thought I wasn't ready for visitors yet. Maybe they were planning some kind of surprise for when I came home. After all, I'd always been the one to handle emergencies, driving Linda to the hospital for her appendectomy, rushing Jason to the ER when he broke his arm. Maybe they just didn't know how to act when I was the one in the hospital bed. I typed out a message, "Hi everyone, I'm being discharged today and feeling much better. Can't wait to see you all. Delete. Too needy. Second try, hospital is releasing me today. Looking forward to being home. Delete. Still too much. One last attempt, doctor says I can come home today. Would love to see everyone." That felt right. Hopeful, but not desperate. I hit send and set the phone beside my packed bag. The reply came faster than I expected. Jason's name lit up first. "Call a taxi. I'm watching TV." I stared at those words, reading them over and over. 47 seconds of being clinically dead, 2 weeks in intensive care, and my son couldn't be bothered to pause his show. But Linda. Linda would be different. 45 years of marriage had to mean something. She'd come. She'd care. Her message appeared right under Jason's. "Stay in the hospital another month. It's so nice without you." The phone slipped from my hand onto the white blanket. Her words burned on the screen like a neon sign announcing the end of everything I thought I knew about my family. "Stay another month. It's so nice without you." I sank onto the edge of the bed, my sports bag sliding to the floor with a dull thud. The sunlight streaming through the window felt cruel now, mocking. My chest ached, but not from surgery. This pain was deeper, in a place no scalpel could reach. Nurse Jennifer appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. She froze when she saw my face and stepped inside, closing the door behind her. "Mr. Miller, you look pale. Are you in pain?" I shook my head, unable to answer. She picked up my phone, glanced at the screen. Her expression softened, sadder now. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "Family can be complicated." Complicated. That was one word for it. Another was betrayal. 45 years of my life spent giving everything to people who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck, a driver, a caretaker. People who found my absence more comfortable than my presence. I looked down at my discharge papers spread across the bed, lists of medications, follow-up appointments, warnings about lifting. But sitting there, rereading Linda's message, those papers began to look like something else entirely. They weren't just instructions. They were freedom. I walked out of Phoenix Memorial Hospital on unsteady legs, each step reminding me I'd almost died, and nobody cared. The cab driver was a weathered Hispanic man with kind eyes. He looked at me through the rearview mirror. "Rough day at the hospital, amigo?" "Try 45 rough years," I muttered before I could stop myself. He gave me a sympathetic glance. "Surgery?" I nodded, settling back into the worn vinyl seat, discharge papers crinkling in my lap. And suddenly, I was remembering another time when I held important papers in my trembling hands. Jason was just a baby, and I was 25 with dreams too big for our tiny apartment. I'd saved for 2 years to buy a Harley-Davidson. That bike made me feel alive every time I fired it up. But babies need cribs, not motorcycles. "The bike has to go," Linda had said, bouncing Jason on her hip. "We need the money for baby furniture." I polished that chrome one last time before slapping a for sale sign on it. $3,000, freedom traded away for responsibility. I told myself it was temporary, just until Jason got older. The cab rolled past a motorcycle dealership. Rows of shiny bikes glinted in the Arizona sun, and my chest tightened, not just from surgical scars, but from decades of sacrifice. "Family's tough sometimes," the driver said quietly, steering us into traffic. "Yeah," I sighed, staring at those gleaming bikes. Tough doesn't even begin to cover it. Family's tough sometimes, the driver said as we merged onto the highway. Mine too. Another memory surfaced. Linda and I were finally planning our long-delayed honeymoon. 15 years late, but we were going to make it happen. Paris in the spring. I'd been saving for months, pulling overtime at the factory. Then Jason got accepted into college. Europe will always be there, Linda had said through tears as she tore up the travel brochures. Jason's education comes first. So the Paris dream got shoved into a box, right alongside every other piece of my postponed happiness. As the cab rolled past the glass towers of downtown Phoenix reflecting the gray January sky, another memory came back, 2003. I was exhausted, driving the same route after another double shift, while Linda stayed home watching her soap operas. When do I get to rest? I asked her once, collapsing into my recliner after 16 hours on the job. When Jason graduates and gets a good job, she promised. Then we'll finally have time for us. Jason did graduate. And then he needed help with rent. Then a car loan. Then seed money for his big graphic design business that folded in 6 months. But the memory that stung worst came in 2010. Jason sketching grand plans on napkins, swearing this was his big break. This is it, Dad. 6 months and I'll pay you back with interest. I signed papers putting our house up as collateral. 4 months later the business was gone, and I worked 3 extra years just to pay off that debt. The taxi turned onto streets I knew too well. Past the elementary school where I'd coached Jason's Little League games, sacrificing weekends I could have used for myself. Past the park where I used to push Linda on the swings back when she still looked at me like I was her hero instead of her ATM. You got somebody picking you up? The driver asked as we neared my neighborhood. My mind replayed the text messages still burning on my phone. Call a cab. Stay another month. It's so nice without you. No, I said quietly. I think I'm done being picked up. The house came into view, white siding, green shutters, the lawn I'd mowed every Saturday for 20 years. It should have looked like home. Instead, it looked like a monument to my stupidity. I paid the driver and stood on the sidewalk, staring at 45 years of mortgage payments and repairs, all so Linda could host her book club and Jason could sprawl in the basement with his video games. The cab pulled away, leaving me alone with a house that suddenly felt like evidence of the biggest mistake I'd ever made. My keys felt heavy as I walked to the front door. The lock clicked, and I stepped into darkness. Even the entryway felt foreign, like I was stepping into someone else's life. I flipped on the light. Mail piled high on the little table. Unopened bills mixed with junk flyers. Linda's shoes were tossed carelessly beside Jason's muddy sneakers. No one had picked up after themselves in weeks. The living room was worse. Jason's gaming setup had exploded across the space like a teenager's bedroom. Energy drink cans made a pyramid on the coffee table. Pizza boxes surrounded the recliner I'd bought with 15 years of overtime. They'd been throwing parties. I moved slowly through the house, each room telling the same story. My absence hadn't caused worry, it had caused celebration. The kitchen. Dishes stacked in the sink, takeout containers spilling out of the trash. The fridge was full of expensive wine and premium ice cream, luxuries they bought while I was fighting for my life. But the final insult was my study. My sanctuary. It was buried under Linda's craft supplies and Jason's old computer junk. Dust covered the family photos I'd arranged so carefully. 47 seconds. I'd been dead for 47 seconds, and they'd used my personal space as storage. I dropped into the only chair not covered in their clutter. The combination to my safe was still etched in my memory, Jason's birthday. How fitting. The safe door opened with a soft click. Inside sat my will, sealed in a blue legal folder. I pulled it out and read what I had written months ago. To my beloved wife, Linda Miller, the house and all personal property. To my son, Jason Miller, every financial asset, including retirement accounts, divided equally upon my death. Beloved wife. I laughed bitterly. The same woman who told me to stay another month in the hospital because it was so nice without me. My son. The 38-year-old man who couldn't pause his TV show to pick up his father after he'd been clinically dead. I looked at the family photos on the dusty shelves. Wedding pictures of a young couple who still believed in each other. Jason's baby photos, tiny hands reaching out, innocent smiles. Vacation snapshots from trips I'd paid for but never enjoyed, always worried about the money. In every photo, I was smiling. The provider. The protector. The fool. I pulled out my phone and searched, Estate Attorneys Phoenix. Page after page of names and numbers. People who knew the truth, that wills could be rewritten, that inheritance was a privilege, not a right. At the top of the list, Jonathan Hale and Associates. Experts in estate planning and charitable giving. Perfect. I glanced around my ruined study one more time, at the clutter and the dust, at the proof of their disregard. Then I looked at the will in my lap. Tomorrow, I'd call Jonathan Hale. Tomorrow, I'd fix the biggest mistake of my life. Tonight, I'd plan how to give my family exactly what they deserved. Nothing. The elevator climbed floor after floor, each ding pulling me closer to justice. 15 stories up, in a downtown Phoenix high-rise, Jonathan Hale was waiting, the man with the power to rewrite my family's future. A week had passed since that homecoming revelation. 7 days of research, planning, gathering documents. That's when I found the American Heart Foundation, a charity dedicated to helping families during cardiac emergencies, people who actually valued the gift of life. By noon we were already at Channel 8's downtown Phoenix studio. The producer, a sharp woman named Jennifer, immediately caught on to why this story mattered. A man giving away his home after his family texted him to just stay in the hospital longer. Viewers are going to connect with this, she said, shaking her head. The interview itself went smoothly. Bright lights, polished cameras, and the exact kind of questions Rebecca had coached me on. The anchor, David Martinez, struck the perfect balance of warmth and professionalism. Mr. Miller, what was going through your mind when you read those messages from your family? He asked. I kept my voice steady. I realized love has to go both ways. Gratitude isn't something you demand, it's a choice. For 45 years I chose to put my family first. When I needed them the most, they made a very different choice. Then came the next question. Why donate specifically to heart research? Because when my heart stopped for 47 seconds, the doctors and nurses fought to bring me back. My own family didn't seem to care whether I lived or died. After the studio interview, the crew followed me back to my neighborhood. Neighbors peeked through their curtains as the Channel 8 van pulled into my driveway. The cameras rolled while David asked more personal questions inside my living room, the same room Jason had turned into his gaming cave while I lay in a hospital bed. This is where you recovered after surgery? David asked. I nodded. This is also where I realized they were celebrating my absence, throwing parties, ordering expensive food, turning my study into storage. The cameras swept across family photos on the mantle. Wedding pictures, Jason's graduation, vacation snapshots, every single one funded by my sacrifices. And every single one a reminder of how much of myself I had given away. Do you regret this decision? David asked. I looked straight into the lens. My only regret is that it took me 68 years to realize my own worth. By late afternoon the crew was done. David shook my hand with genuine respect. This will air tonight at 6. I'd bet other stations will pick it up, too. That evening I sat in a quiet restaurant downtown, my phone buzzing occasionally with updates from Rebecca about social media prep. The Foundation's team was already gearing up to make the most of the story. At exactly 6 o'clock, I watched my own face appear on the restaurant's TV. The anchor's voice was perfectly dramatic. A Phoenix man is making headlines tonight after donating his house to charity. But it's the reason behind his decision that has everyone talking. There I was on the screen, calm, dignified, telling the truth about betrayal and abandonment. The segment showed shots of my house, clips from my interview, and Rebecca speaking about the importance of supporting heart patients. The restaurant grew quiet. I caught people glancing from the TV back to me. Some looked sympathetic, others angry on my behalf. My phone stayed silent, just as Rebecca had advised, let the story spread first. By tomorrow, she predicted, it would be everywhere. Driving home, I couldn't help but wonder if Linda and Jason had seen it. They never missed the local news. Usually they just complained about the weather or argued about politics. Tonight, though, they'd see something different, their own cruelty broadcast to the entire city. And by the time I pulled into the garage, I knew, by morning, they'd finally realized their easy life had come to an end. Straight to voicemail. Andy Miller. This is your wife. You call me back right now. This is insane. Linda's voice filled the recording. They called again. And again. By the 10th try, my phone stopped ringing altogether, dumping them straight to voicemail. Meanwhile, the story was blowing up online. Jason's Facebook feed was drowning in shares of the news segment. Friends, neighbors, half the city, it seemed, were commenting, pointing out that it was their house on the screen. The tone wasn't kind. Look at this, Jason muttered, shoving the phone toward his mom. Everyone's calling us monsters. They're saying we had this coming. Linda was crying by then, mascara streaking down her face. Where are we supposed to go? We don't have money. Everything's in his name. Reality was finally settling in. The house, the accounts, the retirement savings, every last thing was mine. They'd gotten so used to the comfort I provided that they forgot none of it truly belonged to them. By 10 o'clock that night, they'd left me 67 voicemails and fired off a flood of desperate texts. I didn't answer a single one. Jason paced the living room like a trapped animal. Dad's lost it, he said. The surgery must have messed with his head. He doesn't know what he's doing. Linda shook her head, staring at the phone in her hands. Her voice dropped to a whisper. Or maybe he knows exactly what he's doing. Maybe this is payback. They sat with that thought the rest of the evening, trying to wrap their heads around a future with no income, no savings, no home. Jason had never held a steady job, and Linda hadn't worked in 3 decades. What do we do now? Jason asked her around midnight. How do we fix this? Linda wiped her face, looking around the living room cluttered with Jason's gaming gear and her glossy magazines, all luxuries bought on my sacrifices. We wait for him to come home, she said grimly. And we make him understand that family is family, no matter what. So they camped out in the living room, watching the driveway like sentries. Linda brewed coffee to stay awake. Jason kept his phone charged, still dialing my number over and over. Neither of them slept. They sat by the window, waiting for headlights, rehearsing arguments they thought might save their comfortable little world. Deep down, though, they both knew, something had shifted for good. By dawn, their nerves were raw. Linda sat at the window clutching her coffee cup with shaking hands, while Jason paced behind her, phone gripped like a weapon he didn't know how to use. Then, at 8:30 sharp, the sound of my key in the lock froze them both. This was it, the moment of reckoning. I walked in calmly, unhurried, and found them blocking the doorway to the kitchen. Their faces were drawn, desperate. Dad, Jason blurted, stepping forward. What is this madness? We're your family. I set my jacket on the hook, my voice almost casual. Family, huh? When I was in the hospital, fighting for my life, did either of you call even once? We were busy. Linda snapped, her voice shaky. You don't understand how hard it is to manage everything without you. I looked straight at her. So hard that you told me to stay in the hospital another month, because it was so good without me. Her words came back like a knife. Jason's rehearsed excuses crumbled. It was a joke, he muttered. We didn't mean it. I walked past them toward the kitchen. Funny. You suddenly found time to call me 67 times last night, once your inheritance was on the line. They trailed after me like satellites, babbling. Dad, please, just listen. You're not thinking clearly. The surgery messed with your judgment. We love you, we've always loved you. I filled the coffee maker, calm and deliberate, letting their panic bounce off me. Linda grabbed my arm, but the way I looked at her hand made her flinch back immediately. You have 24 hours to leave this house, I said quietly. The words hit them harder than any shout could. Linda staggered. Jason went pale. Where are we supposed to go? Linda whispered. We don't have money. That's not my problem anymore. My tone was detached, almost cold. And that, more than anger, terrified them. Jason tried again, his voice rising. You can't do this, I'm your son. This is my home too. I turned to him. Your home? When's the last time you paid a mortgage bill? Covered a utility? Did anything other than eat my food and leave your dirty dishes? He opened his mouth but no words came. The truth was too obvious. Linda shifted gears, forcing tears. Andy, honey. I know we made mistakes. But 45 years of marriage has to mean something. It did, I said, pouring my coffee. It meant everything, until you showed me how little I meant to you. We can change, she pleaded. We'll do better. We'll appreciate you this time. I shook my head. I'm 68 years old. I don't have time to sit around waiting for you to turn into decent people. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee, opened the newspaper, and let their words fall flat. The foundation takes possession of the house next month. You've got until then to figure out where to live. Jason slammed his hand on the table. This is our house too. Check the deed, I replied calmly. Check the bank accounts. Every document in this house has my name on it. Because I earned it, while you lived off my work. The morning sun spilled through the window, making their helplessness plain as day. For 45 years, they thought I'd always be there. Always providing. Always forgiving. They were wrong. Linda collapsed into a chair, finally realizing the truth. Jason just stood there, silent, watching everything he thought was his slip away with each word I spoke. I stood, slipped on my coat. When I get back from my walk, I expect to see boxes packed. I checked my watch, 9 o'clock on the dot, and headed to the door. Dad, wait, Jason started. 23 hours, 58 minutes, I said without turning around. The door closed behind me with a soft click, leaving them alone with the wreckage of their illusions. Walking down the street I'd called home for 20 years, I felt lighter with every step. Through the kitchen window behind me, I caught a glimpse of Linda and Jason still sitting there in stunned silence. Funny thing, justice didn't feel angry or dramatic. It felt calm. Almost peaceful. When I returned from my walk, the boxes were already stacked by the door. They had taken me seriously. Through the front window, I saw Linda frantically wrapping dishes in newspaper while Jason hauled his gaming gear to the car, sweating under the weight of those monitors. I settled into the old rocking chair on the front porch with a cup of coffee, enjoying a perfect Arizona morning. The air was crisp, the sky clear, felt like the right kind of weather to start over. Dad, this is your last chance, Jason shouted, balancing a heavy box. We can fix this. I didn't even look up from my paper. You had 45 years of chances, son. Linda appeared in the doorway, her hair a mess, eyes red and swollen. Andy, honey, I'm sorry about that message. I wasn't thinking clearly. I shook my head. That's the problem, Linda. You've never thought about anyone but yourself. The whole process was chaos, 45 years of possessions crammed into boxes in less than a day. Linda kept running back inside for just one more important thing, while Jason argued with himself over which old games were worth trunk space. By noon, Mrs. Henderson wandered over from next door, drawn by the activity. She eyed the boxes being carried out in a frenzy. "Everything all right, Andy?" I gave her a polite smile. "Just some family changes, nothing to worry about." She nodded, though the look in her eyes told me she already knew the truth. By now, half the neighborhood had probably seen the news. Jason kept trying different tactics through the afternoon. First came the anger. "This is insane. You can't live without us." Then the bargaining. "What if we paid rent? Helped with bills?" And finally, the pleading. "Dad, where are we supposed to go? Mom hasn't worked in 30 years. I sipped my coffee, calm as ever. "I've lived 68 years, Jason. I'll manage just fine." Linda tried every trick she had, tears, guilt trips about her health, reminders of our vows, sweet talk about old memories. But none of it hit home. I'd seen that performance too many times. By 4 o'clock, both cars were packed to the brim. Clothes stuffed in every corner, boxes jammed into trunks. They had to leave behind furniture, appliances, and piles of junk that wouldn't fit. "We'll be back," Jason said as he slammed his trunk shut. "You can't keep us out forever." "You're welcome to visit," I said, folding my paper, "after you call first and ask permission." Linda stood by her car keys in hand, staring at the house she'd lived in for 20 years. For just a second, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. "I never thought it would end like this," she whispered. "Neither did I told her. "I thought maybe you'd learn to appreciate what you had." At exactly 6 o'clock, 24 hours after I'd given them the ultimatum, both cars pulled out of the driveway. Linda was crying. Jason was fuming. But they were gone. I sat on the porch until the sun went down, watching the quiet neighborhood. For the first time in 45 years, I was completely alone. The silence wasn't lonely. It was beautiful. Inside, the house felt enormous. No blaring TV, no arguments about money, no constant demands. Just me and the echo of my own footsteps. I went to my study and opened the drawer where I'd hidden travel brochures for years: Colorado mountains, Arizona deserts, the national parks I'd always wanted to see but never had the chance. Time. For once in my life, I had nothing but time. February slipped by quietly as I adjusted to the solitude, planning my first real adventure since before marriage. By March, I was standing in Big Bend National Park for the very first time. I'd never camped alone, never taken a trip purely for pleasure. The desert stunned me with its raw beauty, endless skies, ancient rocks, silence stretching farther than I could measure. One night by the fire, I met Tom, a retired teacher from Oklahoma. He glanced at my shiny new camping gear. "First time out here?" he asked. "First time anywhere," I admitted. "I'm 68, and this is the first trip I've ever taken just for myself." Tom chuckled. "Hell, son, it's never too late to start living for yourself." In April, I headed to Colorado. Upgraded my gear, took on some mountain roads. The thin air tested my heart, but those quiet hikes through pine forests filled me with a strength I hadn't felt in years. That month I bought my first camera in decades. The mountains practically begged to be captured. Snow-capped peaks mirrored in lakes, wildflowers bursting across meadows, sunrises painting cliffs in gold. May brought a new friend. Sarah, a widow from Denver, taught me advanced photography on a senior's hiking trip. We'd spend hours talking about light and framing as we walked trails my doctor never would have approved of a few months earlier. At my checkup, Dr. Carter studied me carefully. "You're glowing. Your recovery is remarkable. What's changed?" I smiled. Everything. I'm finally living for myself. By spring, my work with the foundation had picked up too. Rebecca even featured my photos in their newsletters, showing other heart patients that life after surgery could be about adventure, not just survival. Over coffee one afternoon in June, Rebecca told me, "Your story has already saved dozens of families. People are learning to appreciate each other while they still can." But what I cherished most was talking to new patients. Folks about to go under the knife, terrified and lonely. I shared not just the medical part of my journey but the emotional one, discovering self-worth after decades of being overlooked. Family support matters, I tell them. But self-respect matters more. By summer, I was on the road constantly. Arizona deserts bursting with unexpected color. Utah's red rocks pushing my camera skills to the limit. Ancient ruins in New Mexico connecting me to something bigger than myself. And the truth? At 68, I was healthier than I'd been at 58. Hiking, fresh air, freedom from stress, days filled with purpose, they had reshaped my body and spirit alike. Tom and Sarah soon became my regular travel companions. We'd plan meetups at different parks, share campsites, and hit the trails together. For the first time in my adult life, I had friends because of shared passions, not family obligations. One evening in Zion, Sarah studied me as we watched the sun melt into the horizon. "You seem like a completely different man," she said. "What were you like before all this?" I thought for a second, then answered honestly. "Tired. Just, very, very tired." Rebecca's team at the foundation kept sharing my adventures online, pictures of an older guy rediscovering life, stories about family healing, reminders that it's never too late to chase long-delayed dreams. The responses were overwhelming. Heart patients sent messages about their own struggles. Grown kids admitted they recognized themselves in Jason's behavior. Spouses confessed they saw Linda in themselves. By July, I found myself back in Phoenix, not because I had to, but because I wanted to. The house no longer felt like a prison. It was mine now. My sanctuary. One afternoon, while I was at my favorite downtown coffee shop flipping through photos from Colorado, a shadow fell across my table. I looked up and saw Jason. He stood there, hesitant, but different somehow. Cleaner. Older. The baggy gamer clothes were gone, he wore a button-down and slacks. His posture had changed, too. He carried himself like someone who'd finally tasted responsibility. "Dad," he said quietly. "Mind if I sit?" I nodded toward the empty chair. It had been 6 months since I told him and his mother to leave. Somehow, he looked like he'd aged 5 years, and in a good way. He sat down, studying me. "You look good. Healthy. Travel suits you." I closed my photo album but didn't put it away. "How are things with you, Jason?" He hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "Different. I've got a full-time job now, designing marketing materials at an ad agency downtown. I even rented my own apartment. Nothing fancy, but it's mine. I pay my rent, buy my groceries, do my own laundry." I nodded slowly. "That's good, son." He pulled out his phone and showed me pictures of a small but tidy studio. Sparse, but organized. A place he clearly worked for. "How's your mother doing?" I asked. "She's adjusting. Got a job at Macy's, sales floor. Rents her own place too. We don't see each other much. Both busy working." I sipped my coffee, watching him. The arrogance I'd seen for years was gone. In its place was something that looked a lot like humility. Then he surprised me. "Dad, I'm not here asking for forgiveness. I'm not trying to move back in, or for money, or for you to change your will. He took a breath. "I just want a chance to show you I've changed. Maybe we could grab coffee sometimes, like this." I slid the photo album back toward him and showed pictures from my hikes in Colorado, camping under stars, learning photography with Sarah, pushing myself farther than I ever thought I could. His reaction was genuine wonder. "I never knew you wanted to do any of this," he said softly. "I never gave myself the chance," I told him. He nodded, thoughtful. "I've been realizing how much of your life you gave up for us, and how we just took it for granted." I showed him a newsletter Rebecca had put out, featuring my story. "The foundation work keeps me busy. Helps other families learn from our mistakes." Jason managed a small smile. "So we're a cautionary tale now?" "No," I said. "We're a learning opportunity." We talked for nearly an hour. He told me about deadlines at work, difficult clients, the pride of earning his own paycheck. He asked about my travels, where I'd been, where I planned to go next. As we stood to leave, he looked at me seriously. "Dad, I know trust doesn't come back overnight. And if you don't want a relationship, I get that. But I just wanted you to know, I understand now. What we did to you. How wrong it was." Outside, I walked with him to his car. It wasn't new, but it was clean and cared for. Another sign he was growing up. "Jason," I said as he reached for the door, "maybe we could do this again in a month or so." His smile was cautious but real. "I'd like that." I held up a hand. "No promises about anything else. I'm not changing my will. I'm not pretending we're back to how things were. But maybe we can build something new. Something healthier." "I understand," he said. "And Dad. I'm glad you're happy." Finally. I watched him drive away. He checked his mirrors, used his signals, paid attention to the road. Small things, but they showed me he was finally learning responsibility. The late afternoon sun warmed my shoulders as I walked back to my car. Tomorrow I'd head to Arkansas to explore the Ozarks. Next month, maybe Maine for the fall colors. Just then my phone buzzed, a text from Tom. "Sarah found a great campsite in Utah for October. You in?" I smiled and typed back, "Absolutely. Send me the details." 6 months ago, I was a dying man ignored by his own family. Now I was alive, healthy, and surrounded by people who wanted to be in my life, not because they had to, but because they chose to. And that difference meant everything. Driving home through Phoenix, I passed the coffee shop where Jason and I had just shared an honest conversation. I waved at Mrs. Henderson in her garden. I drove by the Hart Foundation office, where Rebecca was planning next month's campaign. And then I pulled into my driveway. Home. Not a cage, not a burden, not a stage for other people's demands. But mine. Some stories wrap up with big reconciliations or dramatic gestures. Mine ended with something quieter, but far more valuable, the peace of a man who finally learned to value himself as much as he'd valued everyone else. And maybe, just maybe, the hope that love could one day grow again, this time in better soil. The sun was setting, painting the Phoenix sky in the same colors I'd once captured in Colorado. Beautiful. Peaceful. And, for the first time in my life, entirely my own.